I guess veering off a little bit on this,
Yeah.
this is like a question for myself as well. Like, what was it like when you started to put your husband and your family first?
Hmm. Gosh, when I started to.
Or just like what
It's
were your thoughts? Anything about that?
Yeah. I would say like it's a different situation for me because I was a stepmom first, and we talk about it a lot where like we both remember really well when we first moved in together. Like I had a job where I worked second shift. I did security, and he would like he would have to like go into work late to take his daughter to school and like scramble to get home in time to pick her up, like cook dinner, grocery shop, do all of it. And I was just straight up like a 19-year-old shitty little human. And I'd be like, I'm sleeping until half an hour before I have to leave for work. And then I'd go to work. Like I'm not doing nothing around the house. I won't take her to school, nothing. So that kind of shifted when her biological mom went through some stuff, and we ended up having her full time. And it just kind of clicked. And then obviously once I got pregnant, it was like a complete game changer as far as priorities go. That's like when I had to find the more stable job and figure stuff out benefits wise. And then putting my husband and my family first with work has been a challenge. We talked about that on the postpartum episode a little bit. I was in a management position for about almost a year where I was salaried. I was putting in, 70 hours a week. And he really has become more of the almost like stay at home dad. I mean, he still works full time, but like he's definitely more of like the provider and the caretaker right now. I'm not working that much now, like that many hours now, but still I'm driving really a long distance for work, coming home late, leaving early, and he's kind of had to pick up the slack as far as that goes. But I will say that everyone in my house, I can directly see the benefit when I am able to put home and family as more of a priority, especially my relationship with my partner.
Yeah.
We have so much easier communication. It's like there's more just easy intimacy and like holding hands. And when I do put them as a priority, if I'm the one, cooking and cleaning and like kind of picking up more of that slack and that burden, I guess,
Yeah.
our relationship improves dramatically for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was a learning curve for me, is like putting family first, because obviously I'd never seen that. But like when I saw that, and like I could see the comfort level in my wife, that she just
Yeah.
knew I'm gonna be there and I'm gonna be doing A, B, C, and D. Like it just like the house just became peaceful.
Yeah.
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 So let's go to our next topic. If you wouldn't mind, can we talk a little about you brought up earlier your experience with sexual assault. Would you mind telling us your story?
Yeah. Um, so when I was 17, I graduated high school when I was 17. So it was the summer between high school and college, and I had just gotten out of a long-term high school relationship, as long-term as they go. So I was a little like funky and heartbroken and feeling it. And I was at this long event that was kind of I race sailboats, and it was a sailing event. Everyone was partying, and I had a close friend throughout high school that was always interested in me, and I wasn't really kind of into it, but we were close friends. I think if we're going to be fully transparent, I think I definitely led him on at times over the years, but I was really in my feelings, and I ended up hooking up with him a couple of times at this event. And he had a girlfriend at the time, and I felt like a crap human being. So I told him, like, not going to happen again, not interested. And that night, after I had told him that, he was extremely intoxicated, and he came into the house that I was staying in and came into my room while I was sleeping and assaulted me. And he was one of my closest friends for the last 4 years, like as I was kind of in a pivotal part of growing up. So I really didn't know that that's what had happened for a while. Like, we were still friends. I remember the next morning he came up to me on the boat and he kind of like put his arm around me, and I felt like I didn't know what I was feeling. I just felt disgusting and dirty and horrible. And he put his arm around me. He's like, "What's up? Why are you so down?" And I was like, "I don't know, but I feel like what happened last night wasn't okay." And he told me that he had blacked out and had no memory. He's like, "I didn't even see you last night. What happened?" And it took me probably another, I don't know, I was at Hamlin when I figured it out. Like, there was, I don't know if they did this when you started there, but they have this play that they do for the freshmen. Yeah, there it is. It's called Until Someone Wakes Up.
Bro, they show that shit the first like 2 days where you're on campus.
Yeah. So, it's funny. Don't hate too much, because I did end up directing it my senior year.
Okay.
But, so I went to not knowing what to expect. They did a trigger warning at the beginning, but for me, I didn't know that I had been assaulted. So I didn't know what a trigger was. I didn't know that the warning would apply to me, none of it. And there was a monologue in the play where the girl was describing the fact that she had not screamed because there were people in the next room and she didn't want to wake them up. And I lost my shit. Like, I froze up. I started shaking. I had a full-on panic attack. I tried to leave the auditorium, but like, I didn't want everyone to see that I was like upset. And all of a sudden it hit me. I was like, there had been people sleeping in the next room when it happened to me as well. And I was like scared to wake them up. I was embarrassed, So I actually called him that night because I didn't know who else to talk to about it. And I was like, "Hey, I think you assaulted me." Which, it just goes to show like how naive I was at the time, like where my head was at. And he basically just like cussed me out. He called me all sorts of names. It was the first time that he got angry at me, like in our entire friendship over the years. And over the next, I'd say like 5 years, obviously he and I stopped talking right at that point because I think he was scared. I started to tell people. I started to tell our mutual friends, because I was still coming out of high school and like we still knew a lot of the same people. And I wanted them to know like what type of person he was, because it had blindsided me so hard. So I told some people, and they were all very like receptive and understanding. And my best friend at the time, she was like a sister. She was the one who was like encouraging me to like go to therapy and talk about it and all this stuff. And after about a year, I found out from somebody else that she had started dating him. So I reached out to her and I was like, "Well, what's going on?" And I was kind of accusatory. Like, I was like, "Dude, I straight up told you what kind of guy this is. Like, what are you doing? Like, how could you do that to me?" And she told me she had never believed me to start off with, that he was too nice of a guy, So it ended my friendship with her. On top of many, many other people. Like, we had the same circle because of sailing, because of high school, because of multiple things. And I told a lot of those people, at different times over the years. And inevitably they all had the same reaction, like, "Oh, that's so horrible. How could he do that? Blah, blah, blah." And then slowly stopped talking to me. And then I still, to this day, like, see social media posts with him. So, I've been going through cleaning people up, cleaning up the friends list. Every time someone posts with him, I'm like, "Okay, you're done. You're blocked." If they know what happened. Mm-hmm. But for me, that was probably the most isolating part, is that no one actually believed that I was telling the truth, even though I had no motivation to lie, nothing like that.
It sounds like you didn't even want to tell anybody about it at first.
No, it was almost a year before I told anyone other than that one close friend, the girl. Yeah. Because I didn't know myself, that's what I'm kind of getting at. I didn't think that when growing up, even though, like I said, my mom was really open with me, like I thought rape meant someone like hiding in the bushes with a knife,
Yeah.
like jumping out at you on your walk home, like a stranger. I didn't know that it could be somebody that you were close with. I mean, in some cases it's family. I didn't know that it could be a close friend. I thought the fact that we were close to begin with just meant that it was like bad sex,
Well, what sticks out is like that you didn't know that you could say no because you didn't want to be a bother, right? You didn't want to cause a ruckus.
I did say no. Don't get me wrong. Like he
Sorry.
knew what was going on. I tried to push him off me. Like
Okay.
physically, we were in an altercation by that point. He was very drunk and he was a lot bigger than me. But I didn't shout. I
Right,
didn't
right.
shout because I didn't want to be a bother. I didn't yell to the people that I knew. The people in the room next door were people I knew really well, and they were mutual friends of ours too. And they would have come in, but at the time, I felt like it was my fault.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what sticks out to me about that is like when I feel like that's a similar thing with like rape survivors. You know what I mean? Where like you hear a lot of them just trying to keep the peace.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I'm sorry that happened to you and I'm sorry that exists.
No, I appreciate that. I don't think I think over the years it became less and less about keeping the peace because I started to realize like I was doing this work, right, with this crisis center and I was seeing these women who were going through this and they were like let's call the fucking cops. Like I want him in jail. They were going and they were standing and in a trial and testifying against someone in the same room as them, you know, that, had sometimes beaten them within an inch of their life just to put them away. And I got to the point where I was like, I'm going to do that.
Hmm.
So I actually did go to the cops. It was just right before my statute of limitations was about to expire
Right.
because I didn't know that I had anything to go off of. So I ended up reporting. I went back to, you have to report in the county where it happens. So I filed a police report over the phone and then I went back there to speak with the detective in person. Um, and he like took all my statement and everything. He didn't want any details. He didn't want like the name of the person that owned the house we were staying in. He wasn't really going to do anything with it. I mean, it was 5 years ago. But the weird part was that they contacted the guy. Um, the detective called me and was like, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know that I reached out to him to let him know that you had a report and we're looking to press charges." And being an advocate, I was like, you didn't have a reason to do that. Like, I know the way this process works. Why did you need to tell him that until charges were pressed? And he basically said like, "Oh, I just wanted to give him a heads up." And then he kind of like tried to bro out with me. And he was like, "Yeah, he asked me if I thought he should hire a lawyer." And I told him like, I wouldn't be too worried. Like he was really kind of like
Are you
casual about it.
serious?
So within 20 minutes of that phone call, after I had not spoken to this man in over 3 years at this point, dude added me on every form of social media, Snapchat, Facebook. I don't think I was on Instagram, but anyway, he all of a sudden is trying to like make contact. So I blocked him on everything and like went radio silent. But the amount of panic and like re-traumatization that I went into just due to the mishandling of that whole situation, like, and I had the knowledge. I started from a place of like, I had been a victim advocate, like I had been passionate about this work, and I was still so traumatized by the way that my police report was handled. Like, it makes me have absolutely no ounce of questioning for why anyone would choose not to report. And that is like the big thing that people use when they're trying not to believe survivors is like, well, why didn't you report it?
Well,
So,
talk more about that. What was the experience like that made you understand that?
well, I mean, just saying that, like for it to be taken in such a blasé way, you know, they're filing a police report and it's treated so casually. You know, I was basically talked down to. I remember throwing up in the parking lot after I had made my statement because I was so horrified by how he had talked to me and how he had kind of been so dismissive about everything that I was telling him. Like, there was no ounce of empathy. You see that shit on SVU where what's her name, like Olivia Benson is like so empathetic with the victims and like, you know, we're gonna fight until this man's behind bars. Like, none of that. It was just straight up like, why are you wasting my time with this? Like, this happened years ago. And I told him, like, part of the reason that I came forward to report was if he did it to someone else, I wanted it to be able to be used in like a future case. And he just like laughed me out of the room, you know? So nothing ended up happening. You know, he didn't experience any kind of repercussions for it. And all that ended up happening was that he found more of a leg to stand on. I still end up seeing him every year or so. There's this sailing event that we go to and he's always there. And he over the years, like, he was scared of me for a while and he would avoid me. And now he'll like come up and insert himself into conversations I'm having with people and just stare me down, you know, because he knows that I went the route of trying to hold him accountable and it didn't work. So I think on some level, he feels even more like vindicated.
Man, like on a societal level, we definitely do a bad job of that. Like in my story, my sister was 13, right? And she got pregnant by a 19-year-old man.
Damn.
Right? And this man was coming to the house. He was like he had free range. And you know, the only accountability that anybody in my family held was to my sister, saying, well, she's fast. She likes older men. She's this. Like putting all the blame. I've recently got into it with my family about this. Because I'm like, y'all put so much bullshit on my sister. And she was raped by a fucking man who was 19. He's now in jail.
Yeah.
Because he's in his 30s and had sex with a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
We condone that.
Yeah.
And put the onus on the woman.
Yeah, that's very true. And that's exactly why I kind of brought up the fact of, like, I'm not talking about all these people that I told that I was close with back then that have split away from me. I'm not talking about them to be bitter or to be salty, because each of them had an opportunity when I told them to make a choice.
Yeah.
They each had an opportunity to hold him accountable. And, you know, one of them did for a minute. He was my boyfriend at the time, and that's why, like, he went to his house and had a talk with him, and they got into it, and it was all this big thing. And the minute that I broke up with him, he's back to being best friends with him. You know, so it just goes to show, I'm not saying all, but a lot of men will only hold each other accountable and be there and believe and support women if they think they're about to get something from it.
Oh, yeah. You know? It's self-serving. It's super self-serving.
Yeah.
Again, men, we got to do the work. So what are some coping mechanisms that someone who survived sexual assault can use?
I think there's two areas to talk about with this. One, I would say, is when you're directly in crisis. People use the word trigger really easily these days. But for me, that word harkens back to what we had talked about earlier with re-traumatization. You know, when you were talking about seeing that video of George Floyd and just breaking down crying, or when I was talking about being in the room during that play and having a panic attack, like, that is the true meaning of a trigger. So being triggered is essentially experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder, experiencing a flashback or a panic attack related to PTSD. So the coping mechanisms that I have used in those moments are going to be a little different than kind of the long-term healing ones. For me, there have been healthy and unhealthy. Let's just put it that way. health-wise, I would say anytime that I'm experiencing PTSD, anything tactile is really helpful for me. Being in water, even if it's just running water on your hands, the best situation obviously would be taking a bath or a shower. And I guess on the unhealthy side, I've definitely had my share of self-medication over the years. There was a pretty extensive dark period in college where I was really struggling with triggers, constantly having flashbacks and dreams and anxiety, and there was a lot of other things going on in my life at that point too, and I found myself smoking a lot of weed at that point. And, you know, for better or for worse, that got me through it, so take that as you will. And then overall, I'm going to say this no matter what topic we're talking about, therapy. For me, therapy in relation to specifically my sexual assault and PTSD was a game changer. I'm at the point now, like knock on wood, where I haven't had a trigger or a flashback or been really in that place where I'm thinking about it a lot in, I would say 2-3 years. And that really does come from the therapeutic techniques that I've, I wanted to say been subjected to, but that sounds a little bit intense. I had a therapist.
You were committed to it. You were committed.
I had a therapist who did EMDR. Have you heard of that at all?
I've never heard of that.
Okay. It's like, I don't remember what it stands for. It's like eye movement, directional something. But basically it's like, it's a methodology that's used for survivors of trauma specifically. My dad actually went and did EMDR as well in reference to the childhood trauma that he experienced. And that made a dramatic impact in how difficult it was for me. So yeah, therapy.
Yeah, therapy all the way around. Is there anything else on this do you want to share, or we can go to current events?
Let me look at my notes real quick.
Because we jumped around a little bit, so I just want to make sure we catch everything.
Oh, I do want to talk about something, and again, don't know if this is universal with survivors, but it's something that I want to put a name to. So right after, when I was in college and I had kind of gone through that friend breakup related to my the guy who had assaulted me, I was pretty dark, and I was also like reeling from the impact of realizing that I had been assaulted. And during that time, I did not see this as being connected, but now that I have some distance from it, I can't not see it that way. I became really, really overly promiscuous for like, gosh, a couple of years. Even when I first met my husband, like, he and I both had some like infidelity stuff going on. We don't need to go down that road, but like,
Same here. So
yeah, I mean, it's like the part of settling into a relationship when you're a player to begin with. Like, it's just how it is. But I really found myself kind of putting myself into bad situations with men on purpose. And like, seriously, when I was assaulted, I think I had slept with maybe 3 guys at that point in my life. And from then to like settling down with my husband, I won't give you a number, but like it skyrocketed. And I think that had to do with like the pain and the struggle that I was going through. At the time, like I said, I wouldn't have said that, but I would say it was like re-traumatization at my own hands, like putting myself into these sketchy situations with men that like, I was like more attracted to emotionally distant, unavailable men that made me feel unlovable and uncared for. And then I would tell them like these deep, dark things that had happened to me in almost this like masochistic way. And then they would push those same boundaries. You know, I was re-traumatized, you know, many, many times with many different guys that took advantage of where my headspace was at after I had kind of shared some of that with them. And I found myself like you know, doing things that like I would never have done in the past, like drinking to the point of being blacked out and then having sexual experiences with guys I had never met before, and just really kind of putting myself into these scary situations that almost made me feel more like I had a reason to feel as crappy as I was anyway, you know? And
Well,
I think
you were
that,
hurting. You were hurting at that time too, right?
right,
You got to give
right.
yourself some lead where you were hurting. And sometimes in our trauma, we put ourselves in those situations. We feel that's what we deserve.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But I think it's important to bring that up and say it out loud, because I think that that happens to a lot of survivors. And I've seen it. And I've seen the judgments that people make on it when they can't understand where someone's at mentally. And I just want to say that, and I've seen survivors hold themselves at such like a horrible level of self-deprecation, saying like, oh, I can't believe I'm doing this, or I can't believe I did that. And I think you have to just know that you're not alone
Right.
in doing those kinds of like self-destructive behavior. Like that's part of it, that's part of the trauma, that's part of the PTSD. So be gentle with yourself, like you're always saying, love yourself gently. It really is out of your control to an extent.
Yeah. Well, Selene, I thank you so much for sharing your story today. This has been an amazing podcast. Rise of the Kings. Selene, you got any last words for people?
Hang in there. We're all going through it together. Maybe it doesn't make it any easier right now, but you know what? We'll make it through. 2021 is going to be a good year.
Hopefully. Man, thank you so much, Selene, for sharing your story. It's your boy, Tony Wilson, checking out Rise of the Kings, episode 9. Come on.